Okay, welcome back. During this lecture, we're going to talk a lot about the various types and configurations of tomahawks that you might come across. Now, tomahawks have been utilised, as we mentioned previously, as both a combative tool and as a general purpose field tool. So let's start with defining the differences between a tomahawk and a hatchet. So if we look at our standard hatchet, you can see it's got some distinct differences already between the tomahawks you've glimpsed on the screen. We'll look at those in more detail. First thing that's most prominent is this is much more of a field functional tool. It's designed for heavy work. It's got a heavier head, hammer pole, and a shorter handle for easier portability in a pack or a piece of equipment. This is a Friscar one, very, very lightweight, plastic handle, polymer handle, and a very, very smooth head in construction. The ergonomics of this particular tool are very, very efficient. More traditional wooden handled hatchets have the same attributes. Now, being able to split wood and prepare items around the camp with a tool like this also means it's naturally going to be actually usable as a weapon as well, without too much extension of your imagination. So, has anyone been hit with a hatchet? Probably. A lot of people prefer to throw hatchets as opposed to tomahawks for an increased sort of level of challenge, being it's only going to stick on one point. So we'll come back to those during the course. Now, with tomahawks themselves, one of the things that makes them more distinct is the head up here is usually lighter in terms of weight and overall construction, and it may be fitted with a range of different implements, being a hammer or a spike. And it's the spike, I guess, that really makes the combative tomahawk stand out. And when people turn up on a survival course with me, often they're carrying things like this with the intent of having it being used in the field. And this Lagana hawk, or Vietnam hawk, is a very specific combat designed piece of equipment. You can tell that by the large smooth hooking section here, so I can hook but disengage easily. It doesn't get hooked in clothing as much. The cutting edge is sufficient to hook into the human body, but it's not anywhere near as thick and heavy duty as a hatchet. So it doesn't have the weight, the pole weight, to drive through timber and heavy material. The spike at the back, whilst it's probably utilitarian for digging, is also really designed to get into body cavities. Okay, so it's designed to penetrate the human body and do damage that way. As a consequence, the whole thing is actually very light by comparison. It's short-handled in this case because that allows it to be wielded very, very close range. Okay, and it's light enough to be wielded efficiently and with considerable speed with one hand. So we'll come back to him as well. Now, if we look back again at our more traditional, this is a Frontiers hawk by Cold Steel. So it's got all the attributes of a hatchet in some respect. It's still very thin in terms of the overall weight of the head is not anywhere near, again, the hatchet. So it's not going to do the heavy duty work that we want for the field. But in terms of combining the attributes of the hatchet and the attributes of a combative tool, it's somewhere in the middle. Make no mistake, being hit with a hammer is going to be as much damage inflicting as being hit with the blade. So it's still got those attributes as well. This has got a longer handle, so it's actually conducive to being wielded with two hands for a whole range of different movements, as we'll go through on the course. The head is removable, so from a portability side of consideration, we can take the head off. I can stow that in my equipment, and I can either retrofit a new handle in the field or take this handle somewhere else in my equipment and then just install it back onto the head as I need to. So it's a very, very useful tool. Other variations are things like the rifleman's hatchet or rifleman's tomahawk. Same type of thing. This is a hand forged head, and it's got much more of a prominent hammer on the tool. Shorter handle, so somewhere between the two that we've looked at so far. So the the length of the haft or the handle is very much user preference, and also what you're planning to do with the actual tool. Okay. This head is a good one to look at exactly. It's much more of a general purpose tool. So whilst it's used combatively, or can be used combatively, it's got a much heavier head. Much more meat in the middle here, gives it a lot more penetration power through your general woodcraft around the camp type of jobs. Not something I'd like to be hit with though. We step along now to something like the cold steel trench hawk. This is a modern entry tool and modern battlefield tool. So there's some key differences here that you need to be aware of. The spike here allows this tool to be used for entry purposes. So breaking through vehicle windows, cinder blocks, walls, light skin doors, so soft skin internal doors and things like that. This is a perfect tool for both chopping through and spiking through to lever those things out of the way and get into the place that you're moving into. The beard here, so this is the beard here coming down. Now this can hook up a lot more than sometimes you'd like it to do, but it's pointed so it hooks into the body with much more tenacity than something like the Lagana hawk, okay, which is quite gentle, and it uses the length here to hook limbs. This fella uses this pronounced chin here to get right into any part of the body that's hooked onto. So it's quite brutal in terms of pulling things away. It's got a longer cutting edge, and it's a curved cutting edge, so it can actually be slicing as well as impact delivered cuts. The head is about the same in terms of weight as a lot of the other Tomahawks, so it's giving it enough portability in terms of speed that we can utilize to get this thing flying through the air. The handles are polymer and it's longer, much more in line with the Frontiers hawk sort of in terms of length. So suitable for single-handed wheeling and double-handed wheeling. So if you could think of situations such as getting through a door for breaching purposes, two hands, much more effective. And then as you step through the door, someone's on the other side. Whoops, I need to deal with that. I've got the tool in my hand, and I can now wield it with one hand whilst moving myself out of the way or controlling the situation. So it's been well thought through, well designed. Then we have more specifically entry or breaching tool type designs. This is a small one called a Rhino tool made by Hardcore Hardware Australia. It's got a lot of utilitarian design built into it. Pry bar at the back end of it. So instead of just a pole handle, pry bar's been put into the end of this to help get through doors, windows and everything else. Lightweight handle, short haft. Short and beveled cutting edge at the top, much more like a chisel. It doesn't have a lot of weight, but it has quite a sufficient weight despite the small handle. So it can get a fair bit of power penetration and kinetic transfer into what it's cutting through. But one of its big differences here is this distinct hook at the back of the Tomahawk as opposed to any kind of hammer or spike. And this is really designed to penetrate wood, metal and other building structures, rip them open like a can opener. So it's got that ability and that specific design as an entry tool. Okay, and of course I can still pick that up in a pinch and use that to defend myself or those I'm working with. They're the working side of things, and I think it's important that we also make mention of the more ceremonial type of use of the Tomahawk sort of design. And this is a Tomahawk pipe. So the top up here is actually fitted to work as a pipe. It's got a hole at the top, tobacco goes in there. The whole thing can be disassembled, and inside the haft itself it's hollowed out and it comes out with a mouthpiece at the bottom, and you can basically smoke that as a pipe. This was something that was very popular with traders in North America when Native American Indians decided that this presented both the pipe concept for their cultural and religious perspectives in terms of smoking tobacco, but also had a utilitarian working cutting edge on it as well. The big difference here is obviously because the haft is hollow, it's got nowhere near the strength of a, I'll give you a better example, a wooden hafted handle, solid handle. This is a good hickory handle. That's going to take a lot more punishment than this. And this is a stainless steel head, but it's also quite light. All right, so as a consequence, it's not going to hold up to heavy duty work. But if the situation warranted, I could probably easily pick that up and defend myself if I needed to. Okay, and it's still got the hooking potential of a lot of the other Tomahawks in terms of this hook and the beard arrangement here. So that's pretty well it in terms of what we wanted to talk about in this particular lecture. So remember, the key differences are hatchet, predominantly a woodsman tool. We have sort of a synthesis of both the combative aspects of tomahawk fighting and the woodsman's fieldcraft tool. And then we have very specific combative tools, okay, designed for either entry or